I wanted to be rich. I wanted to have a lot of money. A lot of money.
Sean O'Malley is in the business of putting people to sleep. 16 fights, 11 knockouts.
I love you, Joe Rogan.
Well, I love you too, buddy.
And in this video, we talk about how he can make $100 million from exactly that, putting people to sleep. But it's not what you're thinking. It's a big decision for him. Should he solidify his status and become the GOAT, or should he do the Conor McGregor route?
I wouldn't be surprised if I read a headline in 5 to 10 years that says Sean O'Malley, UFC champ, sells his company for $1 billion.
Welcome to the Sugar Show, everybody.
So watch till the end to find out exactly what we mean, and the exact step-by-step process we'd go through if we were to help him launch this company. Before Sugar Sean makes $100 million in revenue from his sleep solutions, he actually has to make $10 million. And he hasn't made that just yet. So far, he's made around $1 million in lifetime UFC career earnings, with 500,000 of that being in 2021. And he also mentioned on the podcast that his revenue breakdown is roughly 50% from the UFC, 50% from merch. And so he probably made around $1 to $1.5 million in total revenue or total income last year, if we include his podcast and Twitch sponsorships. And so now that we've covered the number one thing that people care about, how much money he actually made, let's talk about who Sean O'Malley is.
Sean O'Malley is a UFC fighter, and he's currently the #1 ranked bantamweight in his division. One of my favorite things that he said in the interview was that he wants to watch a 3-minute YouTube video of himself. It's just all his career highlights, and all of them are knockout. So that just summarizes his personality. Outside of the UFC, he's very prolific with content. So he streams on Twitch. He has a couple podcasts, one with the trainer, one with his brother, and he just creates a lot of content. On top of that, he sells his own merch. And the reason he started his own clothing line is because he did a partnership with Reebok, and through the UFC, they paid him $3,000 for him selling about $1 million worth of merch. And he basically said, I'm going to create my own thing.
He's a star, right? As soon as he broke onto the scene, we could tell, and he knows it too. He wants to get paid like a star. And so that Reebok deal was a big slap in the face for him. It's like, I pushed this much amount of merch and you're only paying me $3,000. And so he has this conflict with what he should do right now. Should he prioritize money because he doesn't feel like he's getting paid as much as he should be? Or should he prioritize legacy? And I think one person who's gone down and faced this conflict before is Conor McGregor.
So take Conor McGregor, for example. He was the 2-division champ. He had a really pivotal moment in his career. Does he kind of solidify his dominance in the UFC at the peak of his career? Or did he branch out and cross over to boxing and try to make as much money as possible? He chose to go into boxing, and it was pretty successful. He fought Floyd Mayweather. I think Floyd made $200 million and Conor made $100 million. And then he took that and parlayed that into starting his own whiskey brand, which is Proper 12. If you followed him on social, he was promoting this nonstop. It was everywhere. You just walk down the street in New York, you would just see a Proper 12 ad on their truck. And then grew it, and he sold it for $600 million. So he made a lot of money. And you follow his social now, he's like, he bought like a Lamborghini yacht. He's always wearing the new clothes. Every time I see him in a car, it's a different car. So he is definitely living his best life. But when you compare that to his UFC career, so he tried to come back and he went 1 for 3. So he lost against the best UFC fighters. So what happened when he went into boxing and pursued his business endeavors is that the UFC changed and it got a little bit more advanced. It got a little bit more strategic, and he lost to both Dustin Poirier twice and Khabib, which was his big rival. So there's now an asterisk on his career, and that was the trade-off. He traded off money, so becoming a $100 millionaire, over his legacy as becoming the greatest of all time in the UFC.
I think Sean looks to Conor McGregor as inspiration, right? He has talked about starting Sugar Strain, which he hopes will become Conor McGregor's Proper 12 Irish whiskey and sell for like $500 million. But one thing you reminded me of is that most people think that focus means saying no to bad ideas and focusing on the good ones. But in reality, focus is saying no to 100 good ideas. I think Steve Jobs said that quote. And so for Sean, it's a big decision for him. Should he solidify his status and become the GOAT, or should he do the Conor McGregor route? And I lean toward him solidifying his status and dominating the UFC while he's in the peak of his career. The reason I think that is because all opportunities are downstream of fame. So right now, the more fights that he wins, the more famous he'll get. And the more famous that he'll get, the more opportunities he'll get down the line. And not only that, once he gets those opportunities that come to him inbound to start businesses or to start merch lines or to do whatever, he's going to have more leverage and more negotiating power at that table. Right now, he's not as big as Conor McGregor, and so he doesn't have that sort of leverage. But it's inevitable that if he continues with this trajectory, he's going to get there at some point.
And I think the way that he gets there is ruthlessly prioritizing his career in the UFC. So if he becomes the champion and he creates this highlight reel, you can see how stardom and his fandom and it will just increase and multiply. So he's famous now within the UFC, but he's not LeBron James famous. He's not Conor McGregor famous. In order to get there, he has to dominate the sport. And that also means he needs to say no to all the good ideas and opportunities that kind of come across his desk.
Yeah. Just say for argument's sake, he does solidify his status. He becomes this huge star, bigger than Conor McGregor, and he wants to go on and create a business that goes on to sell for $100 million, $500 million, or even $1 billion. How do you think he should think about what to do next?
I think he has two paths, and I think he can actually do both. So the first path is going down the fame route. So it's like becoming a lot more famous. It could be crossing over to the WWE. It could be following what Conor did, go fight a big name boxer, make it the hugest payday possible. It could be acting in Hollywood. It could be following like what The Rock is doing, just becoming more and more famous because people really enjoy his personality and who he is as a person. The second is start a business. And he's been pretty vocal about starting the Sugar Strain. I think he should start a weed cannabis company. He should focus within the intersection of weed and recovery or sleep. I think that's why he uses weed. So it's very authentic to how he's currently using it. And it's a really good niche that he can just dominate that a lot of people cannot copy.
I think the way that I would go about this, because starting any business in weed is extremely difficult. It's so highly regulated. There's so many laws that you need to adhere to. And then like processing payments is kind of a pain. Most of the industry deals in cash. The framework I use to think about this is crawl, walk, run. Essentially, do something really easy, really simple. Once it's working well and you know that you can execute against that, use the momentum from that to do something a little more difficult and then continue to do that. So crawl before you can walk and then walk before you can run. So with Crawl, I think he should focus on selling accessories. It's probably the easiest product to sell in the cannabis industry. It's not easy by any means, but I think it's the easiest. And one great example of that is the company Houseplant by Seth Rogen. And what they do is they have two different companies. One is House and one is Plant. House is the home goods component. It's luxury goods that are accessories, and they sell for around $100 to $500. And I think the company has made around $10 million in revenue in 2021. And their approach is like, hey, we'll aggressively market these accessories or this furniture because it's totally legal. We can sell between states. There's no problem with that. And it'll grow the brand equity. And so as weed becomes more and more legalized, they'll start selling weed through Plant, which is the subsidiary that deals with marijuana. And so I think specifically for Sean in this case, what he can do is partner with Houseplant and just do a one-time drop. This way he gets like dip his toes into the industry, figure out how it works, start meeting people, and also test out the demand for his cannabis company. The good thing about that is he doesn't have to spend a lot of money or a lot of time dealing with regulations, distribution, hiring a team, etc. It's just a one-off thing that he can do. So that's Crawl. What about walking?
So walking, if I were Sean, I would be selling edibles. And specifically, I'd be focused on Delta 8, and I would focus on Delta infused products that are related to sleep and recovery. It's already kind of like how he's using it. So it's really authentic to him and how he recovers. The trend has been CBD, but Delta 8 is this new product that has very similar effects to THC. I think I read somewhere it's about 50%, but it really isn't regulated yet, and it's illegal. So he can literally create this Delta edible or gummy, brand it, and when people order it, he could ship it to their door. He can market and advertise it, so it doesn't have as much regulation.
So I kind of disagree with selling Delta 8. Like, yeah, he has this window to arbitrage the laws, But if he wants to build a sustainable brand, it makes more sense for him to sell perhaps CBD and follow the regulation in that front. Just so if anything ever happens or any clinical studies come out with Delta 8, he is not liable for anything that goes wrong. With walking, if we think about who we would partner with to get this off the ground, there's this company called Sackville & Co. that I really loved. And essentially, it was this business started by two women, and it's accessories for women who smoke weed. So like rolling trays, clothing, ashtrays, etc. And it's really beautifully designed. And so their story is kind of interesting. They started this company, ended up selling it to a public company for around $800,000. So not a great exit. But the public company, they changed CEOs. And so the new CEO came in and was like, hey, Sackville & Co., you're sacked. And so they went through this whole legal battle with them to try and win back the rights for the company. And during that time, they needed money to pay the lawyer. So they started this company called Sackville Studios, which is an agency that specializes in design, but now has expanded to helping with packaging that's compliant and helping with distribution and sourcing, etc. And now this company has completely taken off. They've partnered with Playboy, they've partnered with other huge companies. And I think Sean could partner with them because they have the knowledge, they have the expertise, they have the relationships to get this off the ground. And you can tell that they're really passionate about this space. So if I were him, I would find maybe Sackville Studios or a company like them and try and partner with them to bring this brand to life.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And then if we go back to the framework, if you're going from crawling to walking, I think running is actually selling weed or the sugar strain. So I think after building up the relationships, learning how the industry works, building a brand in the space, and as he becomes more famous, I think that is the right time for him to launch the sugar strain. And then even better for him by then, more states would have legalized weed and have more clear regulations around it. And it'll give him the perfect layup to dominate this market. So I wouldn't be surprised if I read a headline in 5 to 10 years that says, quote, Sean O'Malley, undisputed UFC champ, inventor of the sugar strain, sells his company for $1 billion.
Yeah, I can totally see that happening. And you had this thought, right? We were talking earlier and you had this thought of like, he can totally scrap the crawl, walk, run framework and just skip straight to the end.
Yeah, let's call that the sprint phase, right? So every entrepreneur is really impatient. They want everything done yesterday. They want everything happening 100 times faster. If you want to just skip straight to the end, and if you want to do that today, I would say focus on your career. Let's find someone to handle the business side. I would hire Jim or CEO to handle everything related to his business related activities. And then also focus on finding how to bring this sugar strain to market.
Yeah. I think the great thing about that is he can outsource all this business stuff to someone that he trusts. And he can focus on being the face, being the star, which is playing to his strengths. Like very few people can do what he does. His personality is captivating the way he is on camera. Very few people can do that. And so if he plays into his strengths and finds someone else to play into their strengths, business, I think he could totally dominate and go down the like boxing, WWE, Hollywood route while also bringing this sugar strain to life.
I think that would be a great route for him to do both, right? So there wouldn't be this conflict. He would dominate the UFC and he could also plant some seeds for some of these business opportunities to grow and mature over time.
You heard it here first. Sean O'Malley, undisputed UFC champ, and the inventor of the sugar strain, sells his weed company for $1 billion. That's a wrap.